tonight. Donald Trump follows through on his promise to raise tariffs on Canadian goods. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation calls out an arts organization for funding projects it says no one cares about. And Saskatchewan First Nations celebrate major financial settlements with Ottawa.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Friday, August 1st, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. I'm Ethan Williams. Thank you for joining us. The August 1st trade deadline between Canada and the U.S. has come and gone, and Donald Trump has made good on his promise to hike tariffs on Canadian goods. David Thurton has the latest on where things stand and where talks could go from here.
With a key deadline pass behind closed doors in Ottawa and Washington, top officials continued the work trying to land a deal.
If yesterday afternoon that deal wasn't clearly on the table, then we'll continue to talk to the Americans.
More negotiations after Donald Trump made good on a threat.
Look, we like Canada. I love Canada. I have so many friends in Canada, but they've been very poorly led. They've been very, very poorly led, and all we want is fairness for our country.
Trump signed an executive order increasing the tariff on Canada from 25% to 35% effective Friday. The border tax applies to goods that are non-CUSMA compliant. The White House falsely claiming fentanyl and illicit drugs are flooding from Canada to the U.S. In a statement last night, the Prime Minister said the Canadian government is disappointed but remains committed to CUSMA. Mark Carney spent much of the day at his office, a day of meetings and briefings, amid questions whether there could be a call between him and Trump. But concern remains with sectors hard hit with the new and existing tariffs.
We've got the sectoral tariffs on Canadian automotive. It's got exports down 25 to 35%, depending on which car company. Those are real people's jobs.
Steel producers are calling for retaliation.
We're asking the government to take action against U.S. steel that we do make, and to take that action in a significant and very timely way.
For his part, LeBlanc signaled action is coming.
Our focus is going to turn to what we need to do to ensure that key sectors of the Canadian economy, steel, aluminum, automobiles, lumber, are able to go through this difficult period.
For now, LeBlanc heads home with a split focus, supporting Canadian industry and securing a deal. David Thurton, CBC News, Ottawa.
And as you heard there, Donald Trump's tariffs have been damaging to some sectors of the Canadian economy, but for many industries, tariffs have not been an issue. Peter Armstrong breaks that down.
The vast majority of Canadian exports to the United States are not tariffed and won't be tariffed at this new higher rate. Canada's been able to carve out an exemption for any goods that are compliant under the Canada-US-Mexico free trade deal. The Bank of Canada found 95% of Canadian exports are exempt. And if you add up all of the exports to the United States, including all those exemptions, Canadian producers are only actually paying somewhere between 2.3 and 5% on average. And this change will only make that number slightly higher. Now, that's not to say there hasn't been damage to the Canadian economy. There has, obviously. Steel, aluminum, autos, lumber, they've been absolutely clobbered. But those tariffs are in a different basket, and they remain unchanged by this announcement.
And Premier Scott Moe and Opposition Leader Carl Lebec have given their thoughts about what the province will and should do to combat the tariff threat. According to Moe, the tariffs only directly affect about 5% of the province's economy, but NDP leader Carl Lebec says it's time to use non-tariffed CUSMA-compliant goods like uranium and potash as leverage. She's also calling on the Premier to bring back the ban on American-made alcohol.
Obviously, this is our biggest trading partner, but we're not going to do it with a gun to our head. We're not going to do it in a situation where over 8 months we are threatened time and time again, where we're disrespected. Let's stop acting like we're not holding any cards here.
And I think if we're serious about achieving, a renewed and a revamped and an enhanced trade environment, or some type of a new and improved USMCA, somebody's going to have to move in this space, and we would suggest that it should be Canada.
For now, Mo says he's encouraging the federal government to back off on its retaliatory tariffs. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation is calling out a Saskatchewan arts organization. It says the provincially funded entity is spending money on creative projects that hardly anyone is consuming. And it says that money could be better used elsewhere. Sarah Onyengo reports.
This music video, produced by Regina musician Amy Swallow, was created after she received a $1,000 grant from Sask Arts. But now, it's one of several projects being called out by the Canadian Taxpayers Federation as an example of wasteful spending. The Federation says the video has just over 200 views on YouTube.
Just because art is something that people like, it doesn't justify wasting taxpayers' money on projects that, again, nobody really watches.
Sask Arts gives out more than $6.5 million in grants every year to artists from multiple disciplines. Most of that money comes from the provincial government. But Haubrich says the money is being spent on artists' personal hobbies and things like renting groceries, allowing one artist to take time off work to write music.
And the bottom line is the government doesn't have extra money lying around to fund these types of projects, so they should cut it completely.
But Saskatchewan actor Kent Allen disagrees. He's received provincial grants for theater productions, and he says the money doesn't just support artists, it supports local economies and culture.
You don't develop the skills in whatever discipline you're in. If you don't have a development process, you won't get those successful performers, writers, dancers, musicians. You won't get them. They'll go, people will go, they'll leave.
Allen says viewing art as just a hobby is outdated and ignores how creative work functions today.
We are not hobbyists. We are professionals, and an entity like SK Arts is there to provide stimulus for those professionals to access important information and experience to improve their employment possibilities.
Sask Arts initially agreed to an interview with CBC, but later declined. In a statement, Amy Swallow tells CBC that reducing her video's value to a view count on YouTube, quote, overlooks how art lives, circulates, and resonates in today's world. And as of Friday afternoon, her video now has over 1,000 views on YouTube. But at this point, it's still unclear if the province will change its funding priorities. Sarah Onyengo, CBC News, Regina.
Canada Post workers have voted to reject their latest contract offer. In a statement late Friday, Canada Post told CBC News it had been informed a majority of the 53,000 unionized employees voted against the offer. The union had said it will ask Canada Post to return to the bargaining table if workers voted no. It also says further strike or lockout actions could risk the government intervening again with back-to-work legislation or binding arbitration. As of now, Canada Post will only say it is disappointed in the results and is evaluating its next steps. Construction will soon start on a state-of-the-art centre bringing virtual healthcare to remote and rural Saskatchewan. The Virtual Health Hub is being built on Whitecap Dakota First Nation. That's located about 30 minutes south of Saskatoon. The hub will use technology like robotics, virtual reality, and AI to run remote tests like ultrasounds, and it will let healthcare workers at the hub treat patients in a remote location in real time. The hub's executive director says the advanced technology is expanding treatment options but will not replace in-person care.
Every Canadian, wherever they are, they have the right to access healthcare. And as you know, remote populations, rural populations, and Indigenous communities have a hard time accessing healthcare.
Hub recently acquired software to run some of its advanced technology. Mendez says the hub should be fully operational in early 2027. Well, the Saskatchewan Roughriders are now in Montreal getting ready for game day on Saturday. The Riders may be top dogs in the league standings, but that doesn't mean they'll have an easy time against the Alouettes. Three Down Nation's Joel Gasson breaks down what the green and white need to do to come out on top.
Yeah, I mean, the Alouettes are a very good team, but they're in a weird spot right now. Like, they are a very different team without their starting quarterback, Davis Alexander, who won't be playing in this game tonight, as he played last week and re-aggravated his hamstring injury. So McLeod Bethel Thompson, the veteran who's been around, former Grey Cup champion, he's there. I don't think he's played particularly well. The offense looks very bad, but that defense is never a joke. Noel Thorpe has that group always ready to go, and they can win a game by themselves. So the key to this game is going to come down to the Alouettes defense versus the Riders offense, I think. If they can keep possession of the football, keep the Alouettes defense on the field, try and wear them out, I think they'll have a pretty good chance of winning this game. What they don't want to do is give McLeod Bethel Thompson short fields.
The Friday before a long weekend, a perfect day to take off or maybe call in sick and hit the links instead. It certainly was a nice day for it at a busy Lakeview Par 3 in Regina. Courses across the province will probably be packed as the weather looks nice for August long. Helena Mahalik will break down the full forecast for us after the break. Muscopetang Saulteaux Nation is the latest community to receive tens of millions of dollars from Ottawa over broken treaty promises. It's one of 4 First Nations in the province that have reached deals with the feds this week alone, totaling over $500 million. And as Alexander Silberman shows us, First Nations hope the settlements will help create long-term prosperity.
A broken promise, finally honored 150 years later.
Today we get to celebrate a monumental moment in our nation's history.
Muscopetang Saulteaux Nation welcoming nearly $99 million in compensation from the federal government. The settlement, known as Cows and Plows, recognizing Canada's failure to meet its treaty obligations to help people farm.
That support was meant to help your First Nation develop and prosper. And because it was withheld, your nation and your people did suffer.
The Saskatchewan community is one of 53 First Nations to settle with Ottawa so far, with payouts totaling more than $6.9 billion.
And today Canada is making parts of those wrongs right. It doesn't take away what happened, but they're recognizing that there was some wrongdoing on their part.
The claims stem from promises made in Treaties 4, 5, 6, and 10, which span large parts of Saskatchewan, western Manitoba, and Alberta. First Nations ceded territory to the federal government in the agreements, and in exchange, they were promised payments, reserved land, and provisions, including farming tools, crop seeds, and livestock.
The way in which it was taken on is problematic.
This expert says a one-time payment goes against the spirit of intent in the treaty. She says the promise was about helping First Nations build long-term economic sustainability.
It's not looking at future generations. So what happens when those per capita payments run out?
In Muscopetang, the push to address the wrongs of the past is now shifting to the future. The community plans to use the funds for youth programming, housing, and upgrading its water treatment plant. Each of the 1,300 adult residents will also receive $40,000.
We can get ahead of the game and make our own source revenue rather than just relying on the money from the government.
The federal government says resolving outstanding claims is a key step in reconciliation. It remains in active negotiations with a few dozen First Nations across the prairies. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
And weather specialist Helena Mahalik joining us now. Helena, the long weekend finally here for many of us, and seems like it's starting off on a pretty warm note.
Yeah, pretty warm or pretty scorching, Ethan, and we're going to see these really hot conditions all throughout the long weekend. Let's take a look at our daytime highs. The warmest of our weather was actually up north, which this model doesn't show, but some areas of the north got up to 33 degrees in their daytime highs. South and central Saskatchewan not too far behind, with daytime highs for the majority of the province at around 30 degrees or just a few degrees below. And over the last few days, we have seen some heat warnings in effect for the north. But as of Friday, with these 30-degree temperatures, that has gotten extended down through the northern grain belt and as close to Saskatoon as North Battleford. In the province Friday night, there is some activity down in the southwest for areas around Swift Current. There is a thunderstorm with the chance of severe conditions with strong winds, the chance of nickel-sized hail, and periods of very heavy rainfall. We're going to continue to see some scattered showers throughout the weekend. Maybe that can provide some relief from the extreme heat. Saturday, we're going to see some showers along the northern grain belt. For areas around Prince Albert, maybe some slight showers in the south as well. And as we look ahead to Sunday, we're going to see a chance of showers throughout much of the province, throughout south and central Saskatchewan, and a chance of some thunderstorm activity in the southwest again for areas around Swift Current. But as we get to Monday to end our long weekend, we're seeing mainly clear skies, maybe a chance of some scattered showers up north along the Alberta border. In terms of our wind, we're seeing some wind gusts this evening on Friday with where those storms are in the south, with up to 50 kilometers an hour wind gusts around Regina. We're not going to see too much of a breeze this weekend in the southeast for areas around Estevan. Saturday morning, we'll see a bit of a breeze, and Sunday, just a little bit of a breeze throughout the province, but only wind gusts up to 30 kilometers an hour. And we're seeing that wind isn't going to be too favorable in pushing away our smoke up north, and we're continuing to see that smoke is getting condensed around La Ronge, and we're also getting affected by Manitoba's wildfires. Temperature-wise, Friday we were at that 30-degree mark, and Saturday is going to be the same, if not even hotter. And Sunday we're going to continue to feel that 30-degree temperatures and not much cloud cover in sight to provide some relief from that. Monday is still going to be quite hot. Temperatures maybe just slightly below that 30-degree mark, around 28 degrees. So Ethan, it is going to be an extremely hot weekend to get outside and do activities.
Yeah, in the meantime, we will enjoy it and ignore the fact that it is already somehow August. Helena, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ethan.
Well, Premier Scott Moe was busy this past week hosting political leaders on either side of the border at the Midwest Legislative Conference, where a lot of the conversation focused on trade. Political columnist Murray Mandrick breaks down Saskatchewan's position on this and how it compares to the viewpoint from south of the border.
There is a different take than the take we're seeing from the U.S. White House and Donald Trump. And that's interesting itself. That issue in itself is getting to be incredibly interesting because Donald Trump's position is something that is so vehemently opposed. It's great political fodder locally for the NDP opposition who are basically saying that you have to have the elbows up approach and that Scott Moe hasn't. Now, Scott Moe's argument is no, the elbows up approach doesn't work particularly well, nor does anything in terms of Donald Trump and stopping it. But yet, somehow, interestingly, he's kind of defending the Mark Carney position that, you know, this isn't so bad. We're only 6% of our trade with U.S. in Saskatchewan is being affected by this. And the NDP are saying that claim is sort of much, much worse. So it gets into sort of the political debate specific to the conference that you actually asked about, which I'll get into. As I say, I think these things are good to have because you need to build up those local contexts. Now, our problem is with a national government that doesn't pay any attention to its local governors, local senators, that has an agenda all on its own and that seems to be thinking that it's guiding the U.S. in a different way. Although, once again, we're seeing the talk of Donald Trump where he doesn't basically go as far as his rhetoric suggests, because his rhetoric would be exceedingly costly to us. Sounds good to the U.S. Public, I assume that the Trump administration thinks, but to fully implement it would cost energy costs, would cost. We're not talking about the 35% on most things and everything else. So from that standpoint, interestingly, both sides of this debate, the NDP side that you have to get tough and these 35% tariffs are intolerable and we have to strike back, has validity in its argument. But quite frankly, so does Scott Moe's position that, you know what, it's never quite as bad as it seems.
I didn't want to have to do this, but I have no choice.
After the break, the Saskatoon Fringe Fest kicks off with lots of shows to take in over the next week. We'll introduce you to one artist from BC who says her show is fairy tale meets David Lynch. We'll have that. Plus, Helena has your 7-day forecast. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Saskatoon Fringe Festival is back this week, bringing a mix of returning favorites and brand new shows to the city, including the world premiere of a puppet show from Vancouver. It's called The Day the Beanstalk Market Crashed and blends shadow puppetry, live projection, and surreal visuals. Co-creator Chloe Zeiner describes it as a fairy tale meets David Lynch, but satire. And she says Saskatoon was the perfect choice to debut the show.
This is the only place that we're doing this show, and it is a world premiere. So we're using Saskatoon because it's such a friendly city to get the show seen for the first time. We're really proud to share it, and I think it's going to be really cool.
And you can catch The Day the Beanstalk Market Crashed at the Broadway Theatre beginning Saturday. The Saskatoon Fringe Festival also has over 20 other performances at several venues to check out. The festival runs until August 9th. And Helena, looks like there's going to be some nice weather if you're checking out the festival or other outdoor activities this weekend.
Yeah, we also have the X going on, lots to check out. Make sure you're bringing your sunscreen and maybe an umbrella. Let's check out the forecast for the city of Regina. There is going to be a chance of rainfall all throughout the week, and for our long weekend, temperatures are going to be close to 30 degrees with our overnight lows close to 20. There is just a slight chance of some showers. We know that the southwest is probably going to get the majority of those, but as we get into the next week, we are going to see a better chance of those showers on Tuesday, and our daytime highs are going to return to seasonal or even just below, but a few warm days still ahead. And again, we could have a few days next week of temperatures closer to that 30-degree mark and some more rainfall to end the week. Saskatoon may also see some of that rainfall, and over the long weekend, temperatures will be close to 30 degrees. And again, our overnight lows close to 20. Just a slight chance of that rainfall, but into next week, we have a better chance of experiencing those showers with maybe a few days of thunderstorms as well. But it still will remain quite sunny throughout the week. Starting Tuesday, we're going to see temperatures return back to seasonal and stay that way throughout next week. So Ethan, definitely sunny this week and very hot.
Yeah, this weather definitely feeling like maybe something deep fried at the X through this weekend. Helena, have a great long weekend.
You too, Ethan.
And that is our news for this week. For more news anytime, you can head to our website or subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can also download the CBC News app on your smartphone or tablet. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great long weekend.